Hello friends, I speak to you today about the teaching of military law. This is something very significant because in law colleges there is a growing interest amongst the boys and girls who are graduating with a degree to join the Judge Advocate General's Department of the Army or other two services. In this lecture, we would see how best to make this teaching interesting and meaningful. Let's see what is the importance or what's the reason that military law should be included in the curriculum in law colleges. They are very significant and specific reasons. We have an armed forces that includes Army, Navy and Air Force exceeding 1.45 million who are on active duty. In addition, there are veterans, ex-servicemen who had earlier served in the Army, have come out, completed their tenure of duty. There are next of kin, widows and family members who all are impacted by military law provisions in one way or the other. India has a land border of over 15,000 kilometers, and as you would be aware, India shares boundary with China, Pakistan, Nepal, there is Myanmar, Bangladesh, and apart from this, there is a coastline of 7,500 plus kilometers which takes India to Arabian Sea, Bay of Bengal, Indian Ocean, and because of this, the maritime interests and the sizable naval force that India has. The total land area is more than 3.287 million square kilometers, and you would recall that there are huge cantonments and military stations. There are cantonments like Delhi, Kolkata, Chennai, Mumbai, Lucknow, Kanpur, and very many others. And plus, there are any number of military stations, so therefore, the administration of these cantonments, the civic problems of military stations make it necessary that military law provisions should be known. Although India got its independence by peaceful means under the leadership of Mahatma Gandhi, but ever since 1947 when we became independent, India has had wars where it was drawn into conflict by its neighbors from 47-48 with Pakistan, then in 1962 with China, again 65 with Pakistan, 1971 Indo-Bangladesh conflict as we call it. Very recently after the Kargil war we had the Galwan Valley incident, and apart from this major armed conflicts, India, it may be recalled, army had to be sent to Hyderabad operations, Goa operations, the merger of Sikkim, then in IPKF, Indian Peacekeeping Forces that went into Sri Lanka during Mr. Rajiv Gandhi's tenure as Prime Minister. So I have recounted all these incidents to explain the relevance of military and consequently military law for the students today. The India's defense budget exceeds 70 billion US dollars, which in terms of rupees comes to 5,25,387 crores, and that is for the year 2022-23. Now that is suggestive of the huge financial outlays that are required for the capital or revenue expenditure, for the pension of the personnel who are there, and also acquisition of latest equipment, aircrafts, ships, etc., that are needed to make India self-reliant and capable of safeguarding its national interests. Apart from this, it would be interesting for the law students to be apprised that India is the third largest contingent provider for the United Nations peacekeeping forces. And there, in those conflict situations, the provisions of international humanitarian law and other branches of international law come into the play, and this adds to the reasons why military law should be included in the curriculum of law colleges. It is also important because there is an acute shortage of teachers who can teach this subject. There are not very many teachers well versed, conversant with military law available, and therefore this is a growing channel that needs to be tapped for providing career opportunities in military law. With this in background, I would suggest that there exists a need that a proper syllabus should be drawn up, because teaching should be along structured lines where what is to be taught in what sequence with what weightage needs to be decided. It is suggested that a 2-credit course to begin with, which means about 2 lectures per week would be adequate. This needs to be taught only in one semester. So if there are 20 teaching weeks in a semester, because rest of the time is taken up by other activities including mid-semester exams, semester exams, other items in the curriculum and in the calendar of a law college. Therefore, 20 teaching weeks, 2 lectures, so therefore that takes that anything from 40 to 60 lectures in a 6 months span would suffice for a cadre, for a capsule on military law, which you as a teacher need to drop. Right at the beginning, the law teacher would need to sensitize and explain to the students as to what are the career opportunities. Why should he study military law? How would it benefit him? What would be the impact of this subject in his settling down? And in that, it can be explained that apart from service with the Judge Advocate General's Department, which is the body of professionals who practice, apply military law within the army, there are central police organizations like Central Industrial Security Force, Border Security Force, Railway Police, there is National Security Guard, Assam Rifles. Now these are all central police organizations which also have their laws based just on the identical lines like military law. And of course, it needs to be borne in mind that the Judge Advocate General's Department is not to be seen only in the context of Army, because Navy, Air Force and Coast Guard also have their legal personnel. They may call it by different names, but they are essentially Judge Advocate General's Department of those services. In addition to this, now there is Armed Forces Tribunal that came into being around 2008. The principal bench is in Delhi. There are regional benches at other places like Jaipur, Lucknow, Jabalpur, Mumbai, Cochin, Chandigarh, Kolkata, Chennai. So these regional benches of Armed Forces Tribunal which hear and decide cases based on military law also require the professionals who should or who would be helping in disposal of such cases, and thereby the application and need for military law. The difficulty, apart from shortage of military law, also springs from the fact that in India we do not have conscription. Conscription means we do not have compulsory military service, which is there in some of the European countries, Singapore, United States, like at different times, where every youth, boy or girl, has to serve in the army or the other two services for a given length of time. Now, by that, the familiarity with service laws in those jurisdictions is more as compared to India. This is not the situation in India, and hence a need of qualified experts in military law who can teach military law in law colleges and universities in India. And therefore, the teaching would start with explanation of basic terms. Now, these basic terms can be as to what is a unit, what is a battalion, regiment, what is a company, and the formations below, smaller than a company, there is a platoon, then there is a section, and as you go up, there are brigades, division, corps, and armies. What is a military station? What is a commander? The unit routine, what is a parade, what is a fallen. Now, these terms would require to be explained. The reason being because we do not have conscription, and a normal youth does not know these military terms, and these are necessary to understand the application of that law, and hence this military lexicon or the military dictionary, if I may call it, needs to be explained to the students. The students would also need to be explained different operations of war. Now, what are these operations of war? Basically, there are 4 operations of war which are known as attack, defense, advance, and withdrawal. So, at any time when there is a military action taking place between own troops and an enemy, then these 4 operations would be there. Either you are attacking, or you are being attacked, then you are defending yourself, or you are moving to attack the enemy in some other place when it is called advance to contact. You are advancing means you are moving to contact the enemy, or you are moving out to some other area to fight on a ground of your own choosing, which is called withdrawal. Now, these operations of war also need to be explained before the actual teaching of military law can commence. Then you would be aware that military is a hierarchy driven body or a setup. So, there are different layers of personnel, starting with a recruit when he goes for a training, then there is a soldier or rifleman, and then he gets promotion, there is a Lance Nayak, Nayak, Havaldar, so on. There are junior commissioned officers, Naib Subedar, Subedar, Subedar Major, then there are officer ranks starting from lieutenant, and they go up different ranks right up to the Chief of Army Staff, who's a 4-star general, and his equivalents in other 2 services. How does a person, a candidate who wants to serve in army gets into? So, the process of recruitment, enrollment, then when he comes for duty, there is a parade, line of march, the formations I have already spoken about. Then there are different appointments or duty holders like adjutant, quartermaster, commanding officer. All this would take a few sessions for the students to be explained, and this has to be carried out by the teacher, who himself should understand and be aware to illustrate and differentiate also, apart from giving meaning where so required. We next move on to the necessary literature. How would this teaching be done? What are those books from where you will extract information, knowledge, and pass it on to students? So, There are statutory provisions, Bare Acts of Army Act, Navy Act and Air Force Act, which also have the corresponding rules. Then there is a publication called MML, Manual of Military Law. This can be acquired. This is a Ministry of Defence, Government of India publication. It can be taken up, demand can be sent to them and obtained on payment. Students may be advised to keep a copy of this publication, which is not very expensive. Now that there is an Armed Forces Tribunal, therefore AFT Act would also be needed, a Bare Act of Armed Forces Tribunal, and the faculty would need to explain the students where to get these books. Well, they are not available in a normal bookshop. So a letter would need to be sent to the Ministry of Defence, Publications Division, Government of India. Maybe payment has to be made in advance, and then these books can be obtained from there, and all this process would need to be explained by the faculty to their students. In addition to this, in the necessary desired publication, I would include one actual proceeding of a general court-martial and a summary court-martial. Now these are two different types of court-martial, summary court-martial and general court-martial. So one proceeding can be available in the college library, in the law library, which the students can go and scan through to get an idea as to how does a court-martial actually take place. And of course, there would be need for All India reporters and Supreme Court cases, SCC online, where the cases that have been decided by the constitutional courts, I mean High Court and Supreme Court, are available, whether in physical form or online, which the students can see for better understanding and interpretation of military law provisions. Now, how should this teaching be imparted, actually transferred from the faculty to the students? And I will talk about the pedagogy. I would suggest that apart from classroom lectures, which are necessary, of course, say out of 60, there may be a need of about 40 plus sessions for the lectures. There are training films available. Now these training films on summary court-martial, on a general court-martial, these can be shown, exhibited to the students. Then there may be role plays. In role play, the part is assigned to a student that, okay, you will act as an accused, he will act as a prosecutor, that person will be a witness, this will be the officer recording summary of evidence or the members of the court-martial, and how will you discharge your functions as a defense counsel, as a prosecution counsel, or as an accused, members of the court, judge, advocate, etc. And therefore, by actually performing these roles, the teaching can be very well made to understand as far as the students are concerned, because merely lecturing on this may perhaps in very many cases fail to impart the desired knowledge to the students. Now therefore these role plays may relate to witness, members of court of inquiry, the officer recording summary of evidence, a commanding officer, prosecutor, defense counsel, a formation commander, a witness as to character. So there are a wide options available, and in 2, 3 or 4 exercises different, all these roles can be put across, can be demonstrated, and they can be witnessed by the students who are enrolled for this military law courses. There could also be dedicated cases to highlight one particular aspect. Say for example, how the court of inquiry is to be recorded. There are cases which have dealt only with court of inquiry. So these dedicated cases can be explained at desired. At this, I come to the end of part 1, and shortly we will move to part 2 of this lecture.